Hello everyone, I'm Megan Sullivan and welcome to this review of The Rising Tide, the newest and I believe final DLC content for Final Fantasy XVI. If you like this review, please give this video a thumbs up and this channel a follow. This JRPG fan would super appreciate it. And thank you to Square Enix for providing me with a free code for the DLC. So, what do I think of The Rising Tide? Story-wise? Meh. Doesn't do much to move the needle, but content-wise, it's pretty great. You get access to a new fighting companion, new weapons, new accessories, new upgrades, new enemies, some boss fights, and some pretty views. So let's talk about it. This new DLC content, predictably, is all about discovering the origins and fate of a missing icon, which just happens to be Leviathan, an icon we saw as imagery in the main story quest, but never knew much about. The Rising Tide takes us to a new part of the world map, where we learn of a people who do know the fate of Leviathan and need your help setting a terrible wrong to right. Now, I'm not going to say too much more about the story here, I don't want to completely spoil things, but let's just say the backstory for Leviathan is kind of weird and creepy? I'm just saying. Plus, it doesn't do much to add to the main story, like at all. And that's sort of one of my major issues with the DLC content overall for Final Fantasy XVI, which is it takes place right before the final battle in the main story quest, and so it doesn't or it can't add much to the overall narrative. At any rate, the strange story I could have done without, but I like everything about this short, it's only 2 to 4 hours long, but enjoyable DLC. There's lots to like about it. For one, it's gorgeous! The area of Mysidia, and shout out to Final Fantasy IV and the Water Crystal of Mysidia, this reference made me so happy. The area around Mysidia is stunning. There are waterfalls and flowers and rivers and beautiful lush vegetation, and I like that there's a wink and a nod to Scandinavian culture in here as well. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot to do in Mysidia except for a few fetch quests, and I don't understand this. You actually have to do some of these fetch quests to unlock some of the services in town, like the blacksmith, the item shop, and even getting access to your chocobo, which is kind of lame because it's clearly filler material, but I admit it was interesting getting to know the locals who are actually voiced pretty well, so it wasn't all bad. At any rate, Mysidia and the surrounding countryside are very pretty, and Mysidia is made up of very pretty people. I also like that one of the most important Mysidians, Shula, just happens to be our new companion in battle. Her battle axe is useful and I appreciate it. Yes, you get a new buddy in battle, and it's a good thing because one of the best things about The Rising Tide is the difficulty level. This is a pretty darn challenging DLC, and I actually saw the game over screen a couple of times, believe it or not. This isn't a bad thing, by the way. It forced me to get fast and clever, which in turn was pretty fun. Now granted, I had to do some juggling with my icons, I had to quickly relearn the dodge and run button, and I had to make sure my gear was up to date, which it was, and even then I was in for a wild ride. There's lots of tough enemies to deal with, and some boss fights. Many of these enemies are familiar, corals and bombs and whatnot, although they're impressively tough, particularly the Tonberries, who are legitimately terrifying in this game, both in terms of design and power. I literally ran into packs of them, and I was like, oh no, nope. And on that note, running and screaming in circles was a part of my fighting routine. At any rate, scary as it was, I had a secret weapon in which to deal with them, and that secret weapon is, gameplay spoiler alert, 54321, the power of Leviathan. Surprisingly, you get access to it early, and it comes in handy. This icon is water-based, of course, and can deal damage to one or multiple enemies depending on the skills you equip. I especially enjoyed both Cross-Swell, which gathers up enemies and drops them in a central point, and Tsunami, which is a giant whirlpool that does some serious damage. The animation for this one is pretty cool. And it's great that we have access to new powers because it keeps combat fresh and interesting. By the way, if you're looking to boost Leviathan's skills, good news, the game drops new Leviathan boosting accessories for you to equip. Although because combat is challenging, I would keep on your timely accessories. There's a lot of dodging and weaving you're going to need to do, particularly towards the end of the DLC when things get chaotic and it's all you can do to stay alive. Again, this is not a complaint. Combat is exciting, I'm happy to say. And gameplay spoiler alert again, 54321, you will be in an epic icon fight at the end of the DLC and it's pretty crazy. So lots of cool fights, which reminds me, After you finish the Rising Tide, there is a new challenge available in the Arete Stone known as Kairos Gate, and it's a good place to test out your cool new powers before making your way to the final boss fight. You can also use materials you've accessed around Mysidia to upgrade your accessories and weapons, which I did, and it was nice, although the very pretty blue sword Tide Strike wasn't as powerful as my souped up Omega weapon, but still powerful, so that's good. Is there any downside to the gameplay? No, not really, although I will say the area around Mysidia is pretty linear. I couldn't really go off the beaten track that much, which was a bummer, especially since the area is just so pretty. I actually wanted to explore, and the game wouldn't let me. Then again, you can't get lost, so there's that, and I appreciate that as soon as I finished up a side quest, I could immediately fast travel back to the person who gave me the quest, which saved a nice amount of time. Oh, and before I forget to mention it, the music is very pretty. Most of the tracks are familiar. There might have been one or two new ones. I'm not entirely sure. But as usual, Final Fantasy XVI has some banger music going on. Overall, I enjoyed this short, challenging, if slightly strange DLC. It's totally skippable, you don't have to play it, but if you love the combat and graphics and want to spend some more time with Clive and friends before saying goodbye, I'd say this is worth your time. Did you play The Rising Tide? What did you think of it? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later.
I see we're all here.
So, what is it this time?
I'm not sure yet. The letter delivered to my chambers omitted a few crucial details.
Do we know its provenance?
That was one of the details it omitted. But whoever the sender was, it seems the Dame held them in high enough regard to point them in our direction.
The Dame? Well, she's not one to waste our time. It must be important.
Important might be an understatement. If the letter is to be believed, Leviathan's dominant is in danger, and someone wants us to save him.
Leviathan?
So the Warden of Water has finally returned. What has it been? 100 years?
More. The Lost moniker dates back at least that long. Even our venerable lawsman would not have been so much as a glint in his father's eye when last the mighty serpent brought his crushing waves to bear upon the realm.
But why the gap? I know it can be a few years before a new dominant's born. But over a century?
Should the dominant of Water's bloodline have been severed somehow, it could have prevented a new dominant from awakening.
But if one has awakened now, he couldn't have chosen a worse time. Every nation in the realm has lost its dominant. If word gets out that there is still one to be had, they will stop at nothing to claim it for their own.